These stones could very well be Hanan Pacha. They are definitely older looking than the walls themselves. And they're also made from a different material. They seem to be a kind of limestone, which makes sense if they're Hanan Pacha, or First World, whereas the rest of the construction is mainly made out of red sandstone with some diorite. Is it possible that Puma Punku was used as a quarry and that this was... What is this? Akapana. This is the Akapana pyramid at Tiwanaku. And you notice that all of the stone it's made out of is sandstone. It's all red sandstone. And this huge wall here is an excavation, which shows that the Akapana was buried in that much mud. And that can't happen over the period of 2,000 years. It would take several thousand years for that to happen. And everywhere you walk, you find piles of stone that have been excavated but not put back together. What seems very evident is that the gray stone you see, like that one, and the other ones in these piles, that came from Puma Punku. Puma Punku is far more highly evolved as a structure than Tiwanaku. You see the surgical precision in this groove. That's machine marks. That is not some primitive human being with a stone hammer. Perfect surface here. So this is Puma Punku material, there as well. And you can see it's magnetic. And the way that we differentiate between the Puma Punku and the Tiwanaku periods is the gray stone is Puma Punku. And it is machined flat because this is 12 inches across, and there's no pivoting. That is a flat surface. And contrary to popular belief, there isn't one sun gate, there are 4 of them. This is one of them here. So the other 2 are at Puma Punku. But again, it's an example of why is it here, snapped or smashed in pieces. And then again, over there you see that one sticking out. So we're beginning, I think, to see evidence of the fact that this was covered in mud a long, long time ago. And this is where you see, this is where you see the machining. Because the fineness of the work, and if we had Chris Dunn's gauges, depth gauges, you could measure the fact that this, the depression here is very, very even, within thousandths of an inch. And where you find the, here's where you find sharp corners, especially in this depression. So where you find that, you don't find tool marks. If somebody had a hammer and chisel, they would make mistakes, because they would overcut or slightly off. And both sides should be exactly the same.
Check that again.
In situ, yeah.
Area over here, where they've basically demolished it and taken everything out. It's where the Acapana, this is the Acapana, it's where the Andean Cross Pool was. Right in the centre of that area there.
Mixed in with the muds that they were bringing in naturally, and what you're doing is you're winning out the fine materials. So you're winning out the much finer clay materials, and you leave this layer of these larger, denser sort of pebble, little stones, that type of thing.
Oh, okay.
So like the other stuff erodes.
Yeah. See right there. If you see there, you can see a layer of it. The green, the little green stone is what we're referring to.
Right.
And if you imagine the whole thing, it would be much higher. And they had all been mixed in, and not so obviously that you winnow out all the fine sands and clays and whatnot. What you're left with is this layer of larger, denser stones that have been blown away.
Oh, okay.
And you've got a great big magnetic.
If they mix it up, this mud and these little, green pebbles of this tonight are
Of the Puma Punku period at Tiwanaku, where there was catastrophic damage, and this stone is one of the major ones, because this break could not have been done with guys with sledgehammers. This happened a long time ago because of the weathering on the inside surface and also all the lichen that's growing on it. And that one in the background, that is so cool. This one, and just the precision workmanship of this. There's graffiti. Graffiti, yeah.
Oh yeah, look at that, modern graffiti.
Yeah, and also this. I mean, this is sloppy. I have
That's very sloppy.
I've got a hard stone, making that.
Yeah, but what that looks like to me, that looks that looks modern.
Yeah.
That looks modern when someone was trying to quarry it.
Exactly.
Afterwards.
Yeah.
But this is a little this looks like a little model.
It does.
Yeah, with the stairway.
Yeah, a little model with the stairway.
Yeah, that's bang on.
Okay, can you just go down the series?
Yeah, that's bang on.
So they are.
That was the mistake I made.
Okay.
Jesus. Look at that. That's crazy.
That's great.
That is crazy.
So what's the distance?
I don't know. Probably some sacred distance.
Is that metric?
It's got both.
Oh, good. Okay.
Wow. That is off the scale.
So what do we have?
It's 31. Let's see, 32.5 millimeters.
Okay, and in
32.5.
The 1 inch, a quarter. Let's see, 16th. Let's see, 4, 5, 16ths. 1 inch and 5 16ths.
Okay.
Been put together in modern times.
Yeah, this shows perfectly the outside angle game.
Yeah. Yeah, that's that's why we're seeing these incredibly smooth surfaces, and then these really rough ones in the back, because according to Kurt and others, this would have been exposed to the weather.
Yeah, absolutely.
This looks like there's two different
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it looks like the molded again, where another stone was on top of it.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we see a lot of around Cusco in the Sacred Valley.
Exactly. I totally think it was somehow made soft, and that's why they weren't worried about 90 degree. Because they could make it soft, set another block right on top, and it would totally make it seem just like it were Play-Doh or something.
So, how do you think they made this stone soft?
I don't know. Somebody in the group said that they heard of somebody that figured out some plants you could mix in the Amazon or something. So.
Yeah, bird work, you know.
Condor spit.
Yeah, exactly. So this is that's one of the surfaces. Is this simply erosion? Because when you feel it, it's definitely different. From here through there, it changes.
Was this just buried, or was it something else?
I mean, that, please.
Very surface. It's very, from the break here, you can see it's just a surface feature.
Oh, okay. So that was probably exposure to the elements.
Yeah.
Maybe when they, picked it up, it looks like a fresher break even.
Yeah, that looks like a very fresh break.
Yeah.
They just damaged it. The same here.
Yeah.
No, it's not amazing. How long it would take for this kind of weathering to occur, or it requires proper examination.
This one, look, this is different too. This has those
Yeah.
Oh, the knobs.
Exactly.
the knobs.
That would even. That's an excellent point.
Yes.
That's what we saw in all the other ones.
So I'm
That's
wondering if
could-
that's
Even older.
well, I mean, it looks like you've got two different cultures here. Actually.
Exactly.
That one has the little knot.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the
I didn't
surface
either.
here.
Yeah.
It must have been
Weathered.
It's like they recycled it as well, or smoothed it out.
This, it looks like you've got very smooth surface here, but then they're doing something here.
Yeah.
And this looks like it's been loose a couple times.
And then this stuff
Sandstone to me looks like it was molded.
of soil. You see, what you're looking at is red sandstone that's been made into a wall. But look at this stone here. This is the gray andesite, and look at how beautiful that surface is. The andesite is harder than the red sandstone. And there are indications that the work in andesite is actually much older. The reason why it's so pristine is because it's been buried underground for possibly thousands of years. Thousands of years older than the official story of this site being 2,000. So this is supposed to be just a drainage channel. You see the big rocks that are on top of it. It's all sandstone, red sandstone. But this is where we have evidence that clasps existed, so-called keystone cuts. You notice there's no mortar between the stones. And these clasps would have been molten bronze poured here. We're at 13,000 feet in altitude. And to actually liquefy bronze at this altitude would be incredibly difficult. So this area was exposed in 2012. Most of it is red sandstone, but again here we have a beautiful piece of the andesite. Here, there, and there. There's no way you can do this with hand tools. Unfortunately, there's so much damage to the edges, but we will find areas where the intersection of the two surfaces is so incredibly precise and so crisp edging. This had to have been done with machine tools. It could not have been done by primitive people with bronze chisels and stone hammers. The reason why it's called the enigma of Puma Punku is because if archaeologists were honest, they would say they have no clue who made it. clearly some aspects of it, not all, but some aspects, were the work of a very technologically advanced culture, minimum 2,000 years ago, but more likely even more so. Here again is an example of a piece of stone precisely engineered and cut that is under, or clearly was underground. And here you're clearly looking at a recycled piece of stone. You see the fine workmanship and the angles, yet heavily eroded. However, if you look at the rest of this wall, you see how inferior the workmanship is. It's smooth, especially here. How could this possibly have been done with hand tools? The tolerance of flatness, the precision of the flatness of that surface is within 2, maybe 3 ten-thousandths of an inch. And here too, this is flatter than your tabletop. This is as flat as a sheet of glass. How could it possibly have been done by a Bronze Age culture 2,000 years ago? Most of this material, the pristine material, was buried. And so that's why it's still so beautiful. Other areas had been exposed to the air for thousands of years, like over here. So that's why the surface is not as fine. Okay, what we're doing is we're walking through an actual excavation. You can see that where I'm at is 2 feet plus below the ground surface. And what do we see at our footsteps? All of the stone here is exactly how it was found when the excavation was done. This is an amazing piece of work. You see the sharpness of the corners, the flatness of the surfaces. The other amazing thing about Puma Punku is you don't really find too many 90-degree angles. These people were more sophisticated than that. And when we go over to the H blocks, you'll see definite evidence of that. Rather than being 90-degree cuts in the stone, they're actually dovetails. And that would insinuate that another block of stone matching it would come down and lock into place with it. None of the H blocks are exactly the same size. And that's a complete fallacy that some researchers have stated, that they were as if they were produced in a factory or poured into a mold. Everyone's different. Now, another point to take into consideration is that these grooves here, you see, they're not from the same time period as the shaping of the stone, because these grooves are quite crude. So they would have been made after the initial shaping of the stone. The difference in time could easily be several thousands of years. Okay, here again, this is a block that was found in situ, originally buried. Look at the incredible precision of the cuts, and so many different ones as well. And then as we travel through this area, we're coming up to the foundation stones, some of which, or at least one of which, may weigh 131 tons. This material is red sandstone, and it's from the area. But if it's 131 tons, how is it moved from the quarry 5 to 10 kilometers away to this location, when you see the whole area here is basically treeless? They could not have used logs as rollers. So how could this material have been moved? Unfortunately, red sandstone is not as hard or durable as the gray andesite that we see. And so there's so much weathering on the surfaces that we don't see much in terms of precision. But that block there, which is multiple tons, is the andesite. And what we'll do with the camera is we'll have the camera lower down and then come back up, and you'll see it is as flat as the tabletop. Bronze chisels stone hammers, Inca, Tiwanaku, Aymara, none of them could have done that. We're looking at a clear example of lost ancient technology. So these are the famous H blocks. And again, there have been some theories stating that these were made in a mold or that they were made in a factory, exact copies of one another. But we've taken tape measures, we've measured them, and every single one is different. So the idea that they made a wall is quite foolish. The idea that they made a launch pad for a spacecraft is honestly stupid, because that would be something done in a 1950s science fiction film. The other point, which is or 2 points. One is that this is not a 90-degree angle. The distance between here and there is smaller than between here and there. So this is in fact a dovetail. It is possible that when it was originally built, there were stones that came down and interlocked into this. And as well, the only two symbols that we find at Puma Punku are this one in here and the one below it. All of the carving that was done, all of the images of Viracocha, etc., all of that was done later, and I can show that to you right over here. Pieces that originally held bronze clasps to hold the stone together so that the stone wouldn't move. But why so much work for something which is simply a drainage system? These are recent excavations they're doing, digging down into the substrata. This is a drainage channel, or the same drainage channel that I just filmed, that was underneath the ground, has now been exposed. You see the beautiful
ビルが歪んだな。
危ないよ。
かなり大きな津波が押し寄せております。皆さん、かなり大きな津波が観測されております。皆さん、川沿いから離れてください。かなり大きな津波が押し寄せております。川沿いから離れてください。
어디 섭니까? 공차? 아, 여기다, 색을 풀어. 내가 컴퓨터가. 여기다가 됐다, 여기. 이게 나가서
残量最後までね、逃げおったんだけど。 前のダメだよって言われたんだよね。
まだ来てる？だいぶ落ち着いてるか？だいぶ落ち着いてないか。いやー、あの日はもう一緒に見るのか。勢いがなくなったのでと、多分第2波、第3波来るから、
あの発泡スチロールの量みたいな。これできたってことですか？完全にあるじゃないですか。平場のところに俺の字がもう泉さんとこにいた。俺の字がもう泉さんとこにいた。泉さんとこにいた。一点離れたのに泉さんって止まったってことはね、俺順番にすごんでだよね。
海岸には絶対近づかないでください。
あれだものね。
みんなしなさいよね。何苦いわかんねえ。上苦い。ダメだよっつったんだけど。苦いな、待ってくれいたんだよ、まだ。ダメだって言ったら。他の人は脱ぎなんだけど、一番左端の。
揺れてるよ。雪に乗ってるの、ここかじ難しい。
あれを山がやめるの。あれ、くるって無理や。スローやばいね。無理でしたね。一生懸命水戻してもね。
海の上だってよ、これね。
あ、そっか、海の、あ、なんだろう。油ぶったこねるよな。
通じない。
is inside a chulpa. There's a funerary tower, supposedly. Or maybe not. Could they have been meditation chambers, maybe? This is at Silustani. The oldest ones are ones like this one that are perfectly made. This one being repaired. Next to this lake, just north of Titicaca. It does seem that the oldest ones were the best built ones. And later, other people came, probably the Wadi, and they built other ones that weren't as precise. This separation could be earthquake damage. Silustani near Lake Titicaca. It was built by the Wadi culture prior to the arrival of the Inca, and this is where someone or several people were buried because we found bones inside. However, this above is another chulpa tower. Conventional archaeology says that this was built after by the Inca culture. However, we have evidence that this is actually much older than this one, and that this is an attempt to replicate the look of that. So what we're going to see is this is one of many places where conventional archaeology has got the entire story backwards and wrong. Because what we are witnessing is the finest construction, is the oldest, the more recent is the more primitive. Whereas conventional archaeology teaches us, and history, that we are a evolving being going solely from the primitive to the advanced. But the true fact is that societies rise, societies fall. Rise again and fall. Technology is learned, it is enhanced, then it collapses as the society collapses. The knowledge disappears and is sometimes... So Peter's going to show us what happens when you move a compass away from the building. You can see that it's twitching. And then back in again, please. So there definitely seems to be a magnetic anomaly of some kind going on here, suggesting that these towers were not funeral towers, but they had an energetic function. So what you're looking at is a chulpa tower where half of it has been removed. Now most people are going to say that it was the the Spanish who did that they were tearing it apart for construction, but it's more likely having been here many times, that actually this is a sign of an ancient explosion. That these were sonic resonating towers, and that there was an action that happened thousands of years ago that caused it, at least the outer part, to explode and to throw the exterior off in this direction. Now the explosion seems to have happened from east or east-northeast out this way, but we're going to test with other ones and see if that's the case. The outer area is made out of basalt, but the inner core is made out of a diorite or andesite material. The andesite is much denser than the exterior, and this clay possibly was some kind of insulating material. So rather than this being a funeral tower, this could have in fact been an ancient energy generator or storage device. So you see this one, it's been recreated. Maybe half of it was intact. And so foolishly they've added this clay to fill in. This was done 2 years ago. But the cracks are evidence of something more than simply weight on top of weight.
Control A rather than A sharp.
This one seems to resonate again to A sharp, and it causes actually the interior to really vibrate. Your body vibrates as well when you're inside. Another curious thing about these towers is that they taper upwards. They get wider as you go up, which is not a smart building practice in the modern day, the way we build buildings. Also the band that's around it, and you can see at the very top the way that it curves in. Oops, like that. So Christopher Dunn, the engineer, has a theory that these possibly were like pipes, or that the energy or sound was coming upwards. And his idea, I believe, is that these were actual earthquake or energy relieving chambers to reduce the chance of earthquake. So Charles, you were inside one of these, actually this one on the right. And could you tell me what was happening with the dowsing rods that were in there with you?
Maxine was using the dowsing rods, and it was spinning in a clockwise direction. Not too fast and not too slow. There was 3 of us trying different tones while we were in there. Inside, there's like almost like a spiral rock protrusion of stairway leading to the top, or almost to the top, and it looks like there's a square hatch right in the middle at the top. And so that much of it must be hollow, or there must be something in there, because I mean it looks like a stone door. It's a door, square door.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. So what you're looking at now is the debris field. these stones could very well be Hanan Pacha. They are definitely older looking than the walls themselves. And they're also made from a different material. They seem to be a kind of limestone, which makes sense if they're Hanan Pacha, or First World, whereas the rest of the construction is mainly made out of red sandstone with some diorite. Is it possible that Puma Punku was used as a quarry and that this was... What is this? Akapana. This is the Akapana pyramid at Tiwanaku. And you notice that all of the stone it's made out of is sandstone. It's all red sandstone. And this huge wall here is an excavation, which shows that the Akapana was buried in that much mud. And that can't happen over the period of 2,000 years. it would take several thousand years for that to happen. And everywhere you walk, you find piles of stone that have been excavated but not put back together. What seems very evident is that the gray stone you see, like that one, and the other ones in these piles, that came from Puma Punku. Puma Punku is far more highly